Hello everyone and welcome to Big Rock Moto. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I really appreciate that. I just have two favors as we get started. One, if you're not subscribed to the channel, please subscribe. And two, whenever you're shopping for parts and gear, please use my affiliate links. I really, truly, genuinely appreciate those things. All right, this is the 2025 KTM 890 Adventure R. And I don't know about you, but I really like the new sort of graphic and bodywork and the new colors for the 2025. But anyway, that's besides the point. The point of today's video is to give you the four main reasons why I truly believe that this is probably the best adventure bike you can buy if you are an aggressive off-road rider. Now, KTM, of course, has been in the news a lot lately, somewhat unfortunately, with everything they've been going through with their financial management issues. And they've also sort of, I think with this platform in particular, the 790 and the 890, and also you have the Husqvarna Norden 901 that shares the same exact engine as this. These LC8 engines have developed a less than stellar reputation for reliability. We all know about the camshaft issues that they've been having. Other owners have had various electrical problems and things like that with their bikes, including some of the bikes that I've owned. I fully admit to that. So it is sad that they've kind of had to go through that, because otherwise this is an absolutely phenomenal adventure bike platform. All right, so reason number one that I think this is an incredible off-road adventure bike has to do with what I call durability, but I guess what I really mean is crash worthiness of this bike. So when you look at how KTM did this ingenious design with the fuel tank that starts up here, but wraps down along the engine and covers protects the bottom of the engine and kind of the radiator as well, and has these crash bumpers here and the integrated skid plate. Because of this design, this bike absolutely does not need, and actually you should not put on a crash bar on this bike. So you don't have to go to the expense and adding the weight to the bike of putting on a big crash protection cage. This makes perfect sense. If you're designing an adventure bike that is intended to go off-road, which they're supposed to be, why would you not build in crash protection? It does make sense, and this design has really held up well, and I think stood the test of time for KTM. It's been out for almost about 6 years now. The 790R first came out, and I bought one of the first ones. It came out in 2019, so it's really done well. Pretty much almost any other adventure bike you buy, if you go to the dealer, take it off the showroom floor and take it out on an adventure off-road ride, and you drop the bike or crash it, you're almost guaranteed, unless you've purchased and installed a bunch of those crash protection bars, you're almost guaranteed to do some kind of damage to the bike. However, with the 890 and the 790 and the 901, of course, you don't have that problem. And you've got the protection here, and then it even comes with some pretty good, strong plastic handguards. So I'll show you what I mean. I've done this before in other videos, but it truly is sort of incredible how this bike is able to deal with a real-world adventure riding. You can really do this on this bike. This bike is 100% stock except for some different tires, and you're not going to do any damage. It's got handguards, it's got the tanks to protect the bike, and this is no problem. Just dusting her off a little bit here. No harm done. Just some grass and a little bit of dirt. Okay, reason number two is the suspension. This 890 Adventure R, I have to think for a second to make sure this makes sense. No, I think this is true. I think this has the best suspension of any adventure bike that you can buy off the shelf today, with the exception of KTM's own rally version of this bike, which is a very limited production with the WP Pro. So, it's natural to think that the purpose of a firm supportive suspension is just so that you can ride faster and ride more aggressively and fly off things and all the things you see on Instagram. But actually, while that is true, I would actually argue something a little bit different. For me, the purpose of having a well-supported, properly sprung, properly damped suspension, which this bike has, now some people say it's too firm, but that's actually the whole point. The point of having this is a safety margin. What do I mean? So, the best way is to tell you a story about my own riding. This was many years ago, so I've done this ride called the LA Barstow to Vegas ride. It's a ride here we have in California. It goes, I don't know what it is, a few hundred miles from starting north of Los Angeles, and it rides through the desert all the way to Las Vegas. Now, it's not a race, but we tend to ride pretty aggressively out there. And I was riding an under-suspended bike, and I was going too fast for the conditions, and I was overriding my visibility and my bike's capability. So that crash was my fault, ultimately. But what happened was I came over like a rise, and then there was a big cutout in the road, like where the water had flooded through and made a big rut in the road. Wasn't on the right bike for it, was traveling too fast. I hit it. I stood up, I was probably already standing up, but I did everything I could to try to get through it. But I bottomed out the chassis of the bike so hard into the ground that I lost control and went cartwheeling down the trail at 50 or 60 miles an hour. Now, I was relatively okay. I was beat up, but I didn't get badly hurt. I was in my 20s, so you bounce better then. But the point of the story is that while that was ultimately my fault for overriding what I could see and overriding my bike's abilities, so it's my fault, but if I'd been riding this bike, it may not have happened. So for me, having that properly set up suspension that can actually take that abuse, it's not that I'm gonna be riding that way all the time, it's that when something jumps out at me that I didn't see, that I need to negotiate, whether it's a jump, whether it's a huge washout, whatever it might be, that the bike is able to absorb it because it has a suspension and a chassis to do that and not suffer a total loss of control and crash and potential injury. So that's why I love the suspension on this bike. Okay, reason number 3 has to do with the electronics package on this bike. Now, let me back up for a minute. So one of the big mistakes that I unfortunately see out here in the adventure world is that when people who have some off-road or dirt bike riding background, they go out and they buy their new adventure bike, whether it's this or something else, and when they go off-road, they're like, oh, I got to turn off all those stupid rider aids, right? The traction control, the ABS, whatever it is. But the truth is that modern adventure bikes, things built in the last 5 to 8 years or so, have incredible rider aids that are developed specifically for off-road riding. The fact is that most of the world's best riders, a few of which I've been fortunate enough to meet and even in a lot of cases to be able to ride with on-road and off-road, they all use the rider aids of these modern motorcycles. There may be certain instances where they do turn them off and turn them down especially, but they are using the rider aids of the bike. That's one of the reasons that modern motorcycles are faster, both on closed course racing and in real world, whether it's on the street or on the trail. So getting back to the 890, and this started when the 790R came out in 2019. So we've had this for about 6 years. What KTM did was they used some of their riders, like very accomplished rally racers, people like Quinn Cody, who still works at KTM, which is only about an hour here from where I live. Their headquarters in the US. They developed this 9-level slip control system that they put on these 790s and 890s. So how this works is the bike has a lot of advanced sensors in it, right? It's got 6-axis gyroscopic sensors, and they call it an IMU, or inertial measurement unit. It's better than our brain, right? It's sensing everything that's going on with the traction and with the lean angle and with the throttle opening and all these sorts of things, the wheel speed versus the RPM and all of that. And you've got, when you go into the rally mode on this bike, you've got 9 levels of slip adjust. And how it works is that the higher numbers, so like numbers 6 through 9, I use a lot for general off dirt riding. And also it's very useful to have it turned up like that for maybe a very loose rocky hill climb where you're having trouble spinning the rear tire and gaining control and traction to get up that hill. Mud, snow. There's a lot of situations where actually more traction control can help you out, especially because this is not a dirt bike, right? This is a big, heavy bike. The less crashes you have, the more control you maintain, the better you can be. And I've tested this in a lot of different conditions on these bikes, and it is a game changer versus the other adventure bikes out there. There's no other adventure bike that has this much control of the traction control system and works so well for off-road riding. The next closest ones would be the Desert X from Ducati is okay, and the Africa Twin has a pretty decent system, but they're not as good as this. The other great things about this system is that, you can turn it down to very minimal intervention, which is levels 1 through 3. You can turn it down to level 0, which is off. And the amazing thing about this bike is that when you turn the bike on and off with the key, it remembers the settings as long as you have not completely disabled the front and rear ABS and completely turned off traction control. But even if you've turned traction control to a very minimal level and you turned off the rear ABS, the bike starts back up in the mode that you left off, which is 2 thumbs up. Why don't all adventure bikes do that? All right, reason number 4, this bike is amazing for off-road, has to do with the ergonomics of the bike. And in order to discuss this, I probably have to make a few people a little bit upset. So in talking about the ergonomics for off-road adventure riding, I'm not talking about really just flat gravel roads or street riding, which you don't really need any special treatment for that. But in terms of off-road riding, we have to remember that the reason that we would stand up for riding off-road is not for comfort, but it's for control of the bike. I think if we can understand that, the better off we're going to be setting up the ergonomics of our motorcycle. Let me kind of talk you through what I mean here. So the 890R, when you look at it and when you start to stand on it, it's got a handlebar that is pretty flat and pretty far forward and low compared to maybe some other adventure bikes that you've tried out there. What KTM also did was they gave you an adjustable handlebar mount, so you can flip these risers back and forth. There's also 3 different positions on the top triple clamp where you can bolt the handlebar riser. So if you're shorter or taller, this gives you a great range of adjustment without ever having to need to really change the bars or put on risers. And we'll get to the risers in a minute because I do not like handlebar risers in almost any situation. So the mistake a lot of people make is that they want to stand up here. But the problem with standing up here off-road is that your body's just a wet noodle all over the place, right? So when you're up here, you're just along for the ride. If you're standing on an adventure bike, the point is to control the bike. And so your standing position, actually, I try to get my knees, I don't want my knees too bent because then it loads up my quads and my quads get sore. I want my knees somewhat straight, standing kind of on the balls of my feet. If I need to reach the controls, I can move forward. And then I want to bend. I want to bend not in my back, but I want to bend at my hips. I want to bend right here, okay? And get my elbows up and out a little bit, not exaggerated, that's dumb, but a little bit. And this is the position for off-road riding. And if you don't believe me, just look at how any high-level off-road rider rides their bike, any of them. Look at the photos in the video if you don't believe me. So the mistake that people make is that they put the bar risers, right? And you want to be like up here holding the bars, but it's just, you can't control the bike. There's not enough weight in the front tire to give it traction. You're not in the right body position to control impacts that are coming through the front of the bike because back here, right? But I've got to engage my arm muscles here, up here. So that's my soapbox there about the riding position. So the KTM, the way they've put the foot pegs and where they put the handlebar is correct for off-roading and for bike control. These bikes with these crazy tall handlebar risers and things like that, it's putting you in a very bad position for off-road riding. If you only want to ride slow and you're not riding aggressive terrain, then these things don't really matter, do they? I'm talking to people that want to ride aggressively and be in good control and have very few crashes. If you're looking to buy an adventure motorcycle and you are an aggressive and experienced off-road rider, or that's the level that you're aiming for in your classes and your training, if that's you or going to be you soon, then sadly to say, your options in adventure bikes that are going to make you happy in terms of their performance and suspension and how the ergonomics are set up and everything we've talked about, your options in terms of properly set up adventure bikes are actually extremely limited. You can get other bikes. The T7 is a great example of this, where it's not so great in stock form, but it's got the good bones there to build a great adventure bike with a lot of expensive changes to suspension and other things like that. But if you want to buy an off-the-shelf adventure bike that is ready to go, ride aggressively, fast, also have a ton of fun, it's one of the most fun bikes to ride that I've ever ridden, then this bike is one of the few out there that really is going to do that for you. And yes, I know, we all know that there have been some reliability issues with this LC8 engine platform, and that's really sad and unfortunate. But I think for a lot of us, it's worth taking the risk because this bike is such a good performer and so much fun to ride. So as we close this out, I guess my question to you as the audience is, with everything that KTM's been through with their financial problems and the reliability black spots that they've had, are you still willing to consider buying a KTM adventure bike in 2025 or beyond? Let me know down in the comments below. Well, I hope this video has been useful. Support the channel if you can. I think that's about it. Thanks for watching. Ride safe. I'll see you out there.